Hello guys, it's Bella and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Monday. If you guys are new, every single Monday I upload a video about an unsolved mystery or an unsolved murder, unsolved missing people, all of that kind of jazz. So if you guys are interested in that kind of thing, then come see my channel on Mondays and give this video a big thumbs up so I know that you guys want to see more of this series. Definitely comment down below, let me know what cases you guys want me to do in future videos because I love finding out new cases, so that would be much appreciated. So today's video is actually one of the most interesting cases I have looked into. I have just been obsessed with this case. I think the most interesting thing about it is that there's so much evidence, but there's like no suspects and no leads, but there's so many interesting theories. Like, it's a really interesting case. So I have been incredibly excited to film this video because I just want to share it with you guys. This is literally the most interesting one I've looked into, and that is the case of the JAMISON family. So the JAMISON family disappeared October 8th in 2009. They consisted of, well, there was three of them. It was Bobby, that was the father, he was 44 when he disappeared. Sherilyn, who was the mother, she was 40, and then Madison, she was the daughter, she was 6 years old.
Where are you going, Sissy? Looky, there you are on TV.
So the JAMISON family lived in Eufaula, I believe it's pronounced, in Oklahoma, on a lakefront home, and they had lived there for a few years, but they kind of wanted to like start new and move out into the wilderness. So they were looking at this 40-acre privately owned plot of land which was in Red Oak, Oklahoma. It was like 30 miles from where they were currently living. This place was tiny. There was like 500 people living in Red Oak at the time. So on the 8th of October they packed up their truck, they took Madison and also her dog Macy, and they went on a road trip to go and see the property that they were planning on buying. They like kind of got lost on the dirt road on the way there. They had to like stop. They saw someone there, they stopped and kind of like asked him for directions, and then decided to just like, you know, return and kind of look into the house, go to the house the next day. And that was basically the last time they were heard of. They never made it to go and see the plot of land. And then on the 16th of October in 2009, their truck was found. It was locked and none of the bodies were inside the truck. Only their dog Macy was in the truck, and she was near death because she had been in the truck, this locked truck, for this whole time since like the 8th of October, with no food and no water and just nothing. Luckily I did look into it and she's fine. She's living with Bobby's mum, so she's okay. She made it through. The person who found the locked truck called the Latimer County Sheriff, the police department, and the sheriff came right down and looked into the car. They smashed a window to get in, and they found that like their coats were still in the car. There was $32,000 in cash in a bag under the driver's seat. They also left their phones in there, their GPS, and their like IDs and wallets, which was really weird. When the police arrived, they thought that maybe they had wandered off and like went to go look in, because there was like a forest surrounding where the truck was found. So they thought maybe they went and had a look in the forest. They went for a little hike and they got lost because it is like really hard to navigate your way in the forest. That's what everyone seems to say. So police thought that they might have gone out and gotten lost, so there was like 5 deputies there, and they all went out and started having a look, and they were like calling their names out and basically looking for them, but obviously they didn't find them. The next day, October 17th, they decided to use their cell phones to track what they had done, like the GPS on their cell phones, they could track it. So they used that to find out where, like, what the last movements that the JAMISON family made were, and the GPS led them to a nearby hill, and the JAMISONs basically like walked up there from their car, and they were there for about 15 to 20 minutes, and they took a photo of Madison there. And this photo is like a pretty big deal. Everyone talks about this because Madison looks like really distressed. Like, it's a really weird pose that she's making, and it looks like she's smiling, but it kind of looks like someone's forcing her to smile. And this was taken while they were on that rock, and then after the photo was taken, they went back to the car and they went to leave, and that's the last that they can track of them, and that's the last anybody knows like what happened to them. So after this, there was like a massive search put out for them. There was hundreds of volunteers, police, some on horseback. They had cadaver dogs, tracking dogs, they had four-wheel drive drives, drones, helicopters, literally everything you could think of to add into this search they had. There was so many people, literally like hundreds and hundreds of people, yet they didn't find anything. They didn't find the bodies, they didn't find the Jamison family. There was literally nothing. The dogs did alert to a water tank, like this really big water tank. So they drained the water tank and there was nothing in there. And then the bodies actually like weren't found until 2013, November 15th. They were found, like the skeleton remains were found by a local hunter. They were all lying side by side, face down, and some of the bones were like missing. And it wasn't until 2014 that these skeleton remains were confirmed to be the skeleton remains of the Jamison family. So because there was no like flesh or organs or anything like that, and they had like missing bones, like not all of the bones were there, it made an autopsy report impossible, and there was no official like cause of death. Like it was impossible to figure out a cause of death. And also there was like a large unexplained hole in the back of Bobby's head, which some people think was a bullet hole, but then also like it can't be determined because there's so many like holes on all of their bones and stuff like that that they couldn't definitively say that it was a bullet hole, but just some people think that it was. So that is basically all of the information. Now I'm gonna get into the theories, and this is kind of like the bulk of this video because there are so many theories to this case that it is insane. And the first one that I want to talk about is not really like a theory of how they died, but it's just kind of like an interesting theory that I wanted to throw in there, and that is called the 35-degree latitude, or the line of tragedy. So basically on the 35-degree latitude line, a whole bunch of like brutal deaths took place. The first one was from Andrea Pierre Kennedy. She had postpartum depression, and she murdered all 5 of her children on this line. There was also another one of Pastor Carol Daniels, who was brutally murdered on this line, the 35-degree latitude line, in her own church. Also, Timothy McVeigh bombed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, killing 168 people and injuring 700. And then there was another really weird one, which was Tommy Raymond Estep, I believe that's how you say his name. He had just been visiting Eufaula, which is where the Jamison family was from, and he actually disappeared in like an eerily similar way. They found his truck, but they never found his body, so that was really strange. That also happened on the 33-degree line of latitude. So it's not really like a theory on how they die, but I just thought that was interesting, and I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so the first theory has to do with the Mexican mafia. Bobby's dad, whose name was Bob, they kind of had like a feud. They were in business together. They had a gas station together which they sold, and Bobby was meant to get half of the profit from that, but Bobby's dad kind of refused and reneged on the deal that they had. So then Bobby sued him, and Bob got really angry about this. He was like threatening Bobby's mom, and he was threatening the Jamison family. He threatened to kill them twice, and he was just like a really mean, abusive person. Bobby's mom actually got security, like surveillance cameras, installed at the Jamison house, and the Jamisons had a protective order out against Bobby's dad because of this. And it was also said that Bobby's dad, Bob, was or had ties with the Mexican mafia, which is how the Mexican mafia comes into it. Bobby's dad did have an alibi. He was really sick. He was hospitalized and actually ended up dying 2 months after the Jamison family disappeared. But then again, he could have got someone to do it if he had ties to the Mexican mafia. He definitely had ample resources to do that, but I don't know, he wasn't ever really considered a serious suspect, and that's kind of as far as that theory goes. They never really looked into that anymore. And another theory is the murder-suicide theory. This one I don't really believe. But basically they think that Sherilyn killed Bobby and Madison and then killed herself. The first piece of evidence for this is that she actually kept a .22 caliber pistol in the car, which all of her friends and family had said, but the pistol was never found inside the car, but it was also never found near the remains, which if she shot herself, like how could she just like dispose of the pistol? And also in the car they found an 11-page hate letter from Sherilyn to to Bobby, just like saying how much she hated him and she wanted divorce and that things weren't working. And they did have like a really rocky relationship. They both had depression. Sherilyn's sister had died 2 years before, and Bobby was in a car crash which left him with like really chronic pain, which he had every single day, and medicine didn't really help him, like pills and stuff didn't really help him. That's how bad it was. So he couldn't really do anything like around the house or fix the house, and he couldn't work. So this put like a massive strain on their relationship, as well as the fact that Sherilyn had bipolar disorder. So she was on medication for bipolar disorder, but sometimes like when she was feeling good because of the medication, she would think that like she was fixed, I guess. So she would stop taking the medication. And the whole reason that they were planning on moving to Red Oak, to this new place, was kind of like to start over, hopefully like fix their relationship and make things better. But this, I don't know, I don't really believe this theory, because if it was true, how could she murder her husband and her daughter and then commit suicide herself and then also dispose of the gun, because the gun wasn't anywhere near their bodies? On top of that, they had $32,000 in the car and their dog, and I don't understand why she would bring her dog and $32,000 just to commit murder and suicide. It doesn't really make sense. So a lot of theories in this case are actually really weird, which brings me on to the next one, which has to do with witchcraft and cults and like evil spirits. So the Jamison's pastor, his name was Gary Brandon. He told the police that the Jamison family, both Bobby and Sherilyn, kept mentioning that they thought that their house was haunted by an evil family, or like 3 or 4 people, and Madison was actually apparently talking to 2 of them. Their names were Michael and Emily. These spirits were said to be giving them trouble. So Bobby did mention that he was reading a satanic Bible to kind of perform like an exorcism type thing on the house to get rid of this like evil family or these evil spirits. He also asked the pastor if there were like special bullets that he could buy to kill spirits. Also, Sherilyn's friend Nikki and Sherilyn both kind of like claimed to be witches and were really interested in witchcraft. They also bought these things called witch Bibles, which Nikki claims were kind of like a joke. But Sherilyn would often paint like odd phrases around the town, like she would spray paint odd phrases around the town, including on a shipping container which was in their own yard in Eufaula, and she said, 3 cats killed to date by people in this area. Witches don't like their cats being killed. And the weird thing about this was that the Jamisons actually had several cats that died because of their neighbors poisoning them. Sherilyn often told people that she was a witch, and she would like tell them to come over for a witch's brew and stuff like that. But also her friend Nikki claims that Sherilyn said, if you ever have a problem with someone, you just have to act like you're crazy. So Nikki believes that she kind of pretended like she was a witch in order to like freak people out and like not have to deal with anyone. But she also claims that Sherilyn left notes around her house really often saying things like, get out Satan. And she was even researching, I think it was Nikki that was researching, and she was researching to see if the house was built on a Native American burial ground or if it was haunted, because often, like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard, but if you like disturb a Native American burial ground, then you'll get like haunted. So I think Nikki was looking into that because she thought that that might have been like what was happening, or that might have something to do with it, like the evil spirits that were in their home and the evil spirits that Sherilyn and Bobby thought were haunting them, and that Madison was talking to, and that they were talking to their pastor about. So I think this is kind of included in this theory, but this is about cults. And Sherilyn's mum, Connie, she believed that this had to do with like a religious cult. She says that Oklahoma is kind of like a hoarding place of like cults, especially where they actually disappeared. There was like apparently a whole bunch of cults there, and Nikki, their friend, went up there a year after their bodies were found. She went up to the same place that they were found, and there was apparently like a whole line of cars like in a row, and they all had Texas number plates. And she went a little bit into the forest, and then she heard 2 gunshots, and she like freaked out and thought that the gunshots were kind of like to warn her off, and that like freaked her out, and that's why she thinks it's possibly a religious cult. They also, like, the police department put out flyers of missing people, so there was kind of like media attention and people knew about it, and this call came after that, so we don't know if this is kind of like a hoax call or if it actually had something to do with their disappearance. But Nikki got a call from an anonymous woman, and she said that Sherilyn was in the United White Knights cult and that they had vowed to kill her. So this kind of came after there was like a little bit of media attention around it and people kind of knew about the case. So yeah, there's no idea if it's like a hoax or not, but a lot of the family and friends believe that it could have something to do with like a religious cult or witchcraft or something like that. And then another theory is that the Jamisons, Sherilyn and Bobby, were on crystal meth. So this theory came about because of the surveillance footage that Bobby's mum had put on the house. They looked at that footage from the day of the disappearance on October 8th, and when Bobby and Sherilyn were packing up their car to kind of like go on their road trip, they made like an excessive amount of trips. They made like probably over 20 trips back and forth from their house, and it looked like they were kind of in like a trance-like state. So they were just like passing each other, like going back from the car to the house, and they weren't even like taking notice of each other at all. It was kind of like the other person didn't exist. They were just like in a trance, in their own world, not acknowledging anything but like going to and from the car and the house. So apparently psychologists took a look at this footage as well and said that it could be due to drug use, and in Oklahoma there was kind of like a meth problem at the time, so police thought that if they were on drugs they were on crystal meth. They said that this could also explain the $32,000 in cash that was found in the car, because it could have been like a drug deal that had gone wrong, which kind of doesn't make sense, because if it was a drug deal gone wrong, you think that the drug dealer definitely would have collected the money. And also with the money, it could have been for a deposit on the plot of land because it was privately owned. It also doesn't make sense that they would bring their dog and their 6-year-old daughter to a drug deal with them. The friends and family of Sherilyn and Bobby are also adamant that they did not take drugs. They were actually really upset by these claims, and the police never found any like drug paraphernalia or drugs in the truck or the house or anywhere, anything to do with them. There was no sign of drugs. I feel like the only thing that really led them to believe that it could have been to do with drugs was the whole trance-like state that they were in when packing the car, and also the $32,000 in cash, because that was like a lot of cash to have. So yeah, I don't really feel like that one makes sense, because I mean there's like no proof of it at all. It's just kind of like circumstantial evidence, like, oh, they looked like they were on drugs at this one time and a psychologist thought that they looked like they were on drugs. So that one doesn't really make sense. But there's another one. This one makes a little bit more sense, and this is the border theory. So about a month before they disappeared, they actually had a boarder come and stay with them. He was like a handyman, because obviously due to Bobby's accident he couldn't do anything around the house, so they got this guy to come and stay with them, and he like lived with them, and he was like a handyman and would help out around the house and stuff like that. So this guy, the boarder, made Madison and Sherilyn feel super uncomfortable, especially when Bobby wasn't around. Like they would feel super uncomfortable because of this guy. And one time when Bobby was out, Sherilyn was like sitting on the couch, and this guy like came up to her and got in Sherilyn's face, like right up face to face, and then told her that he was a white supremacist and that she needed to stop talking about her Mexican blood, and he thinks that anyone that is not white should die. So after he said this, Sherilyn grabbed Madison and left the room, and she came back into the room with a gun and basically at gunpoint told this guy to get off of her property, and then she took 2 shots at his feet to like scare him off, and then he left obviously, and the FBI kind of like looked into this a lot. They found out who he was, like his name, because there was a prescription bottle in the Jamisons' truck. They found a prescription bottle with his name on it, so they went and found him, interviewed him, and he had a solid alibi for what he was doing on the night that they disappeared. So they kind of like dropped him as a suspect and didn't think that it was him, but I guess he could have had someone else do it, and I don't know what the alibi was. I looked into it, but I couldn't find any information on what his alibi was. I mean, people can fake alibis, I guess, but the FBI just like dropped him as a suspect completely. And that brings us to the last theory, which is that they died of exposure. There's like 2 theories in this one. One is that Madison ran off and Bobby and Sherilyn like chased after her, and then while they were out there they got lost and died of exposure, which I mean doesn't really make sense, because how can a 6-year-old like run 2.7 miles without the parents like catching up to her? Like I feel like she's 6, like it would be pretty easy to just like catch her a few meters down instead of like 2.7 miles and then not being able to find your way back home. I guess that would explain why they left the truck in such a rush, that they didn't bring their phones or their coats or GPS or ID or anything like that. I feel like that's the only reasonable explanation. And they didn't bring their dog, like they left their dog in the car, but it just doesn't make sense that they couldn't just like get her quickly and bring her back because she was 6. Another one is that they went on a hike and died of exposure because it was cold and they didn't bring their jackets. But then again, like if you were gonna go on a hike, like bring your family out there for a hike, why wouldn't you bring your dog on the hike with you? Like it's just strange that they left their dog in the hike and in the car, and they also left their GPS in the car so they couldn't get back. It was said that Bobby was really competent outdoors as well, so it kind of doesn't make sense that he could get lost out there and then die of exposure. So I don't really believe that one either. And last but not least, this is not really a theory at all. It was just rumored that the JAMISON family was involved in organized crime or like small gangs and crimes. But that was just a rumor and it didn't show any leads. The police never found anything to do with that, like actual physical evidence to do with that. It was just like a rumor. And that is it. That brings us to what I think. I think that this was definitely a planned murder. Like this was not something that was random. It was not just some random attack. Someone definitely knew where they were going, because it was like they were just out on this like dirt road. Like it took 8 days for someone to find their truck. Like someone knew where they were going. They must have been taken out from their car at gunpoint or something like that, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Like if you're fighting for your life, it doesn't make sense that there's no blood or no like signs of a physical altercation at the car. There's no like scratches on the car, or there's no shattered glass, or they didn't drop anything out of their pockets. Like that's really sus to me. So it kind of seems like maybe they may have been taken out from their car at gunpoint, then taken away and shot, and the person left. But I can't, like, I have no idea on why or who would do that. Like there's so much evidence, but there's like no suspects. There's nothing that just like ties anyone specifically to the case, or like a specific reason that this happened. But I definitely think that it was someone who knew them or knew of them, or possibly even the guy that owned the private plot of land. Like I feel like they should have interviewed him a little bit more and like found out what was going on there, because he knew that they were coming. And I don't know, I have no idea who it is, but I definitely think that it was planned and it was someone that knew them. But that is the end of this video. There is currently no suspects, so that really is the end of this video. If you guys have any ideas, please comment them down below. Let me know what you think, what your theories are, what your thoughts are on this entire case. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it and found it interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!